Today we have a very inspiring day, so I'll urge you all to be in the moment. Just to observe a few households. The event is recorded live on YouTube at ACAP Africa. And to keep your people silent and try as much as possible to minimize movement, just avoid any common disruptions. Also, the actors beautifully and handsomely clad in black and white are here to assist you with anything you want. So once again, you're welcome. My name is Sharon Willis Brown Aqua, and I'll do your MC for this event. Just to acknowledge a few dignitaries here with us this morning. We've been joined by guest speaker is here, the chairperson is also here. I wouldn't want to mention their names because we are a surprise we have for you. Yeah, I have to. Can I have someone help me? Thank you. We've been joined by a few dignitaries, and just by way of acknowledgement, Mr. George Stapon, the Executive Secretary for National Media Commission. Can you give us a wave? Please, a round of applause. And lawyer Xavier Sosu, the Member of Parliament for Medina constituency. Welcome, sir. We have Dr. Kojo Asante, a Director for Policy Engagement and Partnerships at the Center for Democratic Development. Okay. Professor Techuwa Menu, Emerita Professor at the University of Ghana. She stepped out. Okay. We are also going to be joined later on by the Deputy Minister of Education, Honorable Clement Park, and later on by the Deputy Minister for Ministry of Justice, as well as the Ambassador of Angola in Ghana. And it is my very wonderful privilege to invite Professor Kwejo Apieje Etia, the Regional Director for ACAF, to deliver the welcome address. Professor is an expert in human rights law, and his dedication to academic freedom especially make him the perfect voice to set the tone for this morning. So please help me welcome Professor Itia.
Of Parliament, Governing Board, ECAF members, distinguished speakers, distinguished guests, friends of the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Africa Coalition for Academic Freedom, and in my position as the director, I wish to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the launch of this organization. I also wish to welcome the arrival of ECAF itself. It's been more than 20 years in the making, and I recall my first encounter with Scholars at Risk when the then Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Tego, asked me to represent the university in the Scholars at Risk event in Ethiopia. And that is when I fell in love with academic freedom. From there, sub-regional workshops were organized on the continent, and that sparked the beginnings of discussions about regionalization of academic freedom on the continent, or in the world as a whole, and with Africa in mind. With the deteriorating condition in the academic freedom situation across the globe, a formal discussion began to develop regional hubs to ensure better protection of academic freedom, taking into account the fact that there are certain peculiarities that are unique with each continent. Similar to the recognition of regional human rights architecture throughout the UN system. So the decision to set up ECAF came about 2 years ago, and there have also been similar organizations set up in the Americas, based in Sao Paulo, called the Coalition for Academic Freedom in the Americas, and another one in Southeast Asia as the Southeast Asia Coalition for Academic Freedom, based in Bangkok, Thailand. ECAF was officially set up as a project of CDD in August 2024, and we officially got registered at the end of the year. ECAF is anchored in the belief that the state of academic freedom in Africa is dictated to by the colonial higher education landscape, which is dominated by factors such as massification, higher lecturer-student ratios, poor remuneration for lecturers, undue interference by the state in the affairs of the university, and poor allocation of resources for research. These factors have affected the ability of the African university to realize its raison d'etre, which is the production, dissemination, and application of knowledge, which are located within the ecosystem for the exercise of academic freedom. Thus, although many African countries, including our own country, Ghana, have now given de jure recognition to academic freedom in their post-Cold War constitutions, it has not translated substantively into improving the culture of respect for academic freedom on the continent. Scholars at Risk has identified certain key indicators for academic freedom violations. And having studied them, which brings in the regional peculiarity to the subject, is that some of the issues or the indicators do not reflect the African realities. And that has also been echoed in the Americas as well as in Southeast Asia. So there are a number of violations which take place, which are not on the radar screen in African countries. Against this backdrop, identifying the history, the actors, the factors, the context, and nuances informing academic freedom matrix in Africa is critical to identifying the root causes of the problems uniquely facing academic freedom in Africa. Moreover, academic freedom remains an abstract concept, even among the academic community, and more so in the larger society. Its purpose, relevance, mode of application, means of making claims and seeking redress, among others, remain a mystery to many. It is against this backdrop that the Africa Coalition for Academic Freedom is set up as the first organization of its kind distinctly devoted to championing academic freedom concerns on the continent. ECAF also believes that academic freedom is a catalyst to promote human rights in general, democracy, respect for the rule of law, and sustainable development in the larger society. Therefore, it is the goal of ACAF that its activities will not be limited just to academic freedom, but to larger issues. That is why the theme for our presentation today is on academic freedom as a catalyst for democratic enhancement. It is to help achieve these goals that we have set for ourselves that ACAF decided to partner with CDD, which is a respected and experienced civil society organization with a proven track record of achievements in democracy, human rights, gender issues, anti-corruption, and with experience in granting sanctuary to at-risk civil society actors. And one of the goals of ACAF is also to provide sanctuary to at-risk scholars and researchers across the continent. On this note, we wish to thank you for coming to this program, and we welcome you to the other activities scheduled for today. Thank you very much for your coming.
Thank you, Prof. Now, I have a pleasure of introducing a person for today. She's a professor of African and Gender Studies at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. In 2005, she became the foundation director of the University of Ghana Center for Gender Studies and Advocacy. And from 2010 to 2015, she was the director of the Institute of African Studies. She's the immediate past president of the African Studies Association of Africa, an honorary professor at the Center for African Studies at the University of Birmingham, a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, and in 2023 to 2024, a Wangari Maathai visiting professor at the University of Kassel. She's an activist scholar, and at the heart of her work are questions of identity and power within families, institutions, political and religious spaces, and the knowledge industry. As a lady, I am very, very honored to introduce you today. And with a resounding round of applause, please, let me welcome Professor Akosua Adomako Ampofo.
Thank you very much for that welcome and introduction. Professor Kojo Appiah-Gyekye, there you are. Honorable Ministers of State and MPs, those who are here and those who are, as we say, on their way coming. The ACAF Governing Board, His Excellency the Ambassador of Angola to Ghana, I'm not sure if he's here yet, Professor Kofi Abuchi, Dr. Chikamba, Rob Quinn from Scholars at Risk. Good morning, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, and passionate advocates for academic freedom. A big thanks to Kojo for inviting me to do this. He and I have shared academic freedom pursuits at the University of Ghana together. So I'm very pleased to launch this, pleased to be here, to be present at the launch of ACAF. Today, I believe that we stand at the threshold of a new chapter in the pursuit of academic freedom and excellence in Africa at a very interesting point in our political and historical times. It's a critical initiative that is born, I know, from a deep understanding of the challenges our academic communities face today. And we can see just how fast that is being eroded in certain parts of the world. We are here united, I hope, or will be united by the time we leave, by a shared vision to safeguard and promote the fundamental right of academic freedom across our continent. This coalition is not merely a symbolic gesture, it is a call to action, because the effects of the work of ACAF will be for civil society freedoms even more broadly than just within the academy. Academic freedom enables scholars to challenge conventional wisdom, to push the boundaries of knowledge, and to contribute to the betterment of society. And yet, as Kojo Appiaje mentioned, it's a concept which sometimes is nebulous, is also increasingly under scrutiny. People are redefining it in ways that are very constricting for us. And recent events globally and locally have highlighted the vulnerabilities of this freedom, from political interference in research to the suppression of dissenting voices. And some of that suppression even leads to the arrest of people. This is not new, but we are living in a particular moment. The launch of ACAF is a timely opportunity to examine these challenges, to understand their root causes, to explore strategies for safeguarding academic freedom in our unique African context. And I dare say this notion of academic freedom is built on the notion of the right to have rights, right? Who can have a right? Anne Arendt, who fled Nazi Germany in 1933, said that this right to have rights can only be guaranteed by a political community. And without community membership within which to claim them as their own, people will have no laws, courts, or mechanisms for claiming those rights. And I believe that ACAF provides an important space within which we can enjoy those rights. We recognize the challenges facing African scholars and institutions, from the interference to also the resource constraints that Kojo has referred to. And the need for such a coalition is undeniable. In many parts of Africa, scholars are facing increasing pressures, limiting their ability to pursue research and express their views freely. In fact, sometimes we are even muzzling ourselves for fear of what somebody may say when we have not even been asked to be silent. This coalition will act as a shield, protecting academic freedom and enabling African scholars to contribute fully to the global knowledge economy. It will foster dialogue, hopefully provide some resources, and we shouldn't read resources just in financial terms, but the social resources, the economic resources, even the emotional resources that can support this act. And the coalition will serve as a platform for collaboration, advocacy, and support. Together, all of us here, I hope, will be committed to amplifying our voices, sharing best practices, and working tirelessly to ensure that academic freedom thrives in every corner of Africa, and that we will teach the rest of the world how it can be done better. Let us embark on this journey with determination and a shared commitment to empowering African scholarship. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. I think we can do it better for Prof. Truly going to be committed to this very good cause. Now, I would like the owner of Nissan Almera with the car number 563815 to attend to his or her vehicle right now. GE 563815, Nissan Almera, please. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to hear from our keynote speaker. He's a luminary in the field of law and education. Professor Ernest Kofi Abochi is the Dean of the UPSA Law School and an Associate Professor of Comparative Constitutional Law and International Law. Now, prior to his appointment, he was the immediate past Dean of the Gimpa Law School, a position he held for 6 good years. Dean Abochi is also a practicing lawyer, a public intellectual, a member of the Ghanaian Bar, and also the chairman of the Ghana Forum of the African Bar Association. Dean Abochi holds a Bachelor of Laws degree and Barrister at Law certificate from the University of Ghana and the Ghana School of Law, respectively, as well as a Master of Laws degree from the Harvard Law School and a doctorate in Constitutional and International Law from the University of Milan, Italy. He is widely consulted by leading ministries and constitutional bodies in Ghana. I told you today we are going to be inspired, right? Please help us welcome Professor Ernest Kofi Abuchi.
Thank you very much. See, the chair, all other districts reserved. I'm delighted to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity by way of invitation, which I hasten to add was quite late. So forgive me if I'm reading from my phone from points that I've jotted at the last minute, but I accepted to come because the conversation is one that I find quite dear to my heart. And not having had the opportunity of speaking on a topic like this, I thought I wasn't going to let this slip by. So I'm going to start my discussion, or rather my short speech on academic freedom with an anecdote, or on an anecdotal note. Sometime in 2016, I organized a conference at GIMPA, then as the Dean of the GIMPA Law School. The conference was on the Supreme Court of Ghana, and I invited a speaker whom I should have reviewed carefully before inviting him, although I have known him for so long a time. So I invited Professor Raymond Atuguba, a distinguished Ghanaian legal scholar and at one time a public servant. Professor Atuguba attended this conference and delivered a speech, or rather made a presentation, on the Supreme Court Justices of Ghana and spoke about their judicial decisions, gave a trend analysis, adopted a certain methodology, and the outcome of his presentation was to show, and by the way, some of those justices were at the conference. So he was speaking to their faces, and to add insult to injury, he specifically mentioned a particular judge, whose name I mentioned, and focused on him and tried to demonstrate the fact that his decisions, in essence, were all political. Now, speaking to a Supreme Court judge who was present at the meeting, the former Chief Justice, Justice of Akufo, who was present at the gathering, and telling them in their faces that they are political, for the legal pretense or pretenses of those decisions were exactly what they were, pretenses. The judges did not take kindly to that. The conversations were marked by heated exchanges, and when the conference was over, I knew something was going to happen. What was going to happen, I wasn't quite sure about, but I could imagine. We dispersed. I left the conference grounds, Lisa Hotel, for another function, I can't remember. But I remember Aliza because it was at Aliza that I received a call. My former asked me to explain what the conference was about and giving a few other explanatory justifications for that conference. But in short, reminding me that the office of the Chief Justice, and for that matter, the Judicial Service, was extremely displaced. But I must confess that not only did I find the conclusions of my former board counterintuitive, and counterintuitive because with the conference was counterintuitive. It didn't make sense. Happy with a platform. I think the microphone is not happy too. But I provided a platform for essentially the Judicial Service to be embarrassed. For the Judicial Service to be embarrassed by the conclusions of the research findings that were presented. And so, in essence, my boss was asking that the law school should prepare an apology letter for the Judicial Service. What I wasn't sure about was whether it was a demand or it was only a courtesy that we were given by reason of our new repentance. I remember indicating to my former boss at the time that I was not disposed to writing an apology. I had all the respect and courtesies for the institution of the Office of the Chief Justice. I had all the respect and courtesies for the institution of the court, but I did not think that an institution like a university, GIMPA, whose enterprise it was to fundamentally disagree with the established order, to disrupt the order in ideas, to challenge the existing status quo, and to challenge orthodoxy, was the one who was going to apologize for ideas. I refused to write the apology. As to whether eventually the apology was written, I heard rumors, but I can't confirm anything. But that passed, and I have never overcome the feeling of anger, the feeling of frustration, and the feeling of what academic institutions pretend to be, but in truth we are not. It is part of the reason I accepted Kojo's rather belated invitation to be here, because I thought I would have the opportunity to speak about a subject which is 10 years from next year, and for which I still remain quite sad about. It is therefore important for us to ask the question, why do we speak of academic freedom? There is a philosophy to it. It is imperative for us to remember that the university or institutions of higher learnings are supposed to be marketplaces of ideas. What we do is to challenge ideas, create ideas, and lead society in new thinking. When institutions begin reflecting the established order, they cease to be worth the name institutions of higher learning. And I dare say rather sorry as someone who has been, and I'm in the presence of Prof. and very distinguished academics, so I mention my number of years in academia with humility. I was Prof's student. But as someone who myself has been in academia for the past 23 years, I dare say that our institutions have gradually lost that proper reputation of leading in ideas. Rather than becoming creators of ideas, we have become reflectors of ideas. Rather than becoming leaders in ideas, we have become followers of ideas. Universities are no more the institutions that are supposed to be on the hill. And by the way, I'm told in Ghana, Legon means the mountain of hill. The hill of knowledge. Rather than being that hill that people point to as being the citadel of knowledge, we have become followers and reflectors of the chaos of society. So the essence of academic freedom is so that universities remain those leaders, the citadel of knowledge, the citadel of new ideas, the places we go to when ultimately society is in need of new thinking. Unfortunately, universities have become the opposite. Number two, universities are supposed to be torchbearers. If you look on the crests and the badges of many institutions, what you see is a certain torch. It is very common to many universities. I was in St. Augustine's College. I'm quite proud of that. And our crest contains the torch, that light, which is supposed essentially to represent the fact that universities and institutions generally are supposed to bear the torchlight of society, which also then means that where society experiences darkness, universities are supposed to be the light in the darkness. Unfortunately, we have lost that light, and we have gradually become reflectors of the chaos of society. And finally, the essence of academic freedom is that institutions of higher learning are supposed to be the laboratories for testing ideas. We are supposed to be creators and creative thinking. And creative thinking cannot happen if all you do is to reflect the existing knowledge. And that is why, unfortunately, as we reflect on academic freedom, let us remember that the freedom should not only be for academics, the freedom should also be for students. To what extent are teachers of new knowledge? Teachers are very happy when our students reproduce what we teach them. Many of us do not accept challenges, and many of us do not even accept students who can demonstrate thinking on their feet in the classroom. Lectures. Many lecturers are known to fail students simply because these students are not obstinate and they do not follow. These students are not brilliant. They are students who have perspectives, who have ideas. Lecturers feel intimidated, or that is what we've been told many years. And I remember years ago in the university we've been told. Anytime we went for lectures, students are very good. One of the first things they do is to find out who the lecturer is. They have to profile you. And so smart students are told, look, in this lecturer's class, you want to pass your exams, give him back what he gives you. We all did it. We all told. And so this one, don't go and ask questions. Just give it back to him. You get your A, you go away. Later in life, you will learn the things you want to learn. As we speak of academic freedom, we cannot be pretentious about the fact that we as academics themselves, sometimes we are the first point of suppression. We suppress our own students' perspectives and their own new thinking. The students who have gone to the library to learn and to research on something new, we suppress them. And yet we ask, that the world outside respect our freedom to research. It is important for us to remember that we live in a generation, or we live in a time, when science, politics, and knowledge are clashing on a daily basis. The recent experience of the world with the COVID-19 scenario tells us one such difficulty. When science itself became political, and when diseases are not diseases, unless, of course, the political establishment accepts it. That was a classic scenario of academic freedom in tension with the rest of the society and the rest of the world. And researchers will have to now decide where they fell in the political divide and the political spectrum, whether they fell on the side of opposition or they fell on the side of government. In the days of climate change, when you have to decide whether you are a climate denier or a climate acceptor, whatever the description is, we have scholars who have been known to be paid to research and to come out with outcomes that demonstrate that climate change is a hoax. And these researchers have challenged the researchers of the IPCC, CCC, of the UN, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So it is important for us to remember that we live in an era where researches are politically textured. Research must reflect a certain political perspective, a certain political angle. And so in recent days, as we approach elections, suddenly political science experts will have to come out with researches that show that a particular political party is going to win by a certain margin. And true to expectation, those political parties win, and these researchers suddenly are appointed into government. It has been the trend for some time in Ghana. And researchers and scholars are beginning to realize the market in that field. And so anytime we're approaching elections, suddenly we hear of all kinds of research outcomes that reflect a certain political paradigm. And these continue to pose challenges to the perspectives on academic freedom. It's important, therefore, for us to know that we live in an era of democracy versus totalitarianism. Except that even in the democracy that we practice, in reality, we have totalitarian tendencies. Academic freedom, or the opposite, the lack of it, reflects totalitarianism. The idea that government can control the happenings on campus. The idea that research must reflect the established order. Because in totalitarian states, research can be the very reason why there is an uprising against the established order. And that is why totalitarian states are very careful what research outcomes are published. You need certifications, you need approval before you can speak on certain things or before you can publish certain research outcomes. What is therefore the scope of academic freedom? Can knowledge be destructive? Maybe these are questions we should ask ourselves. Can we come to a point where truly knowledge can be destructive? There was a famous American leader who once said, because ideas per se cannot kill, or because knowledge cannot hurt, I can say things against you, but I haven't hurt you. I can only, let people not like you as much as they like you. I can only challenge your perspective. But ideas do not hurt. But is that true? The fact that someone can scream fire in a room and the pandemonium as people try to escape may result in people getting injured is something that has engaged the attention of lawyers, and something the question is asked, to what extent should we have the freedom of expression? It is interesting that academic freedom itself is guaranteed under the right of expression. So if you go into the Constitution under Article 21, the Constitution speaks of the right that we have the right to academic freedom, but it is under the general freedoms. So is freedom free, or should we have limitations on all freedoms as the general perception goes, that there is no absolute freedom? So can knowledge be destructive? Do we have to worry about research? Must there be parameters or limitations on research for the sake of society itself? And so let's consider, for example, ethical boundaries to research. Many of our universities have ethical committees on research. Do we even need ethical committees on research? I sometimes want us to challenge conventional knowledge and conventional wisdom. We sit here and speak about orthodoxy, that we should not necessarily accept all orthodoxy. We should challenge orthodoxy. Challenging orthodoxy means sometimes some of the ideas are difficult to swallow. And so, for example, someone investigating cloning, the idea that we can research into cloning, so that I will clone a particular being in which I have a half-sheep, half-human being. As we speak of the conventional cloning, where we have Dolly the sheep, the humans were able to successfully clone a sheep, and therefore we created, quote unquote, a sheep. But can we allow research that allows findings into the possibility of cloning people with animals, and therefore we can come up with a being that is half animal, half human, you will accept it. If you're a Christian, the chances are that you will not accept it. Even if you're not Christian, the likelihood that you will accept the fact that we should get to a point where we may very soon have beings that are indescribable is something that may challenge our conventional knowledge and wisdom. But what happened to orthodoxy? What happened to challenging orthodoxy? Challenging orthodoxy is nice when orthodoxy is not good itself. But challenging orthodoxy is problematic when the orthodoxy appears to be good. And therefore, the so-called non-orthodoxy may be introducing a problem in society. Gender reassignments. Until recently, we've been told that everyone can become anything. In fact, until recently, I think it was becoming quite funky, almost sexy. When you wake up in the morning, today I feel like I'm a woman. And so I find it quite offensive that instead of calling me Ernest, by the way, my name is Ernest, few people know that. Instead of calling me Ernest, you rather call me Ernestina. You know, and actually people have sued people in the U.S., yes, just for calling them the wrong name. Because they know them by a certain name, and the person says, no, I'm a woman, even though I look like a man, call me by the opposite gender. That was on the rise. It was becoming quite funky. And then suddenly America, I think, has taken an about turn, and it seems the new paradigm is on the rise. And that new paradigm is a man and a woman, nothing in between. But robotics. The world is not toying with robots. And the world is worried about robots. The fact that we're about to have generative AI, where AI can think for itself, can multiply for itself. The thing we haven't gotten to is the idea of an AI actually mating and multiplying themselves. So let's get to that point where we can have AI that can mate. A male AI, a female AI, they have independent mind, generative AI. They can think, they can copulate, and suddenly they can create a third AI. And we have zero control over these. And very soon the world's population, which is 7 point something billion, sooner than later may perhaps be 10 billion. 3 billion of that is AI. Can we live with that? The reality is that challenging orthodoxy has its own concerns and its own worries. But in the scope of academic freedom, can we accept that everyone has the right to undertake and pioneer any research, and the boundaries are close to zero as we try to keep government out of our business? Can we keep ourselves out of the business of ourselves? Because within the fray of academia, we are not necessarily homogeneous. There are those who have perspectives we do not agree with. There are those who have ideas we challenge and we do not accept. And some of these pose difficult questions to answer. Ghana's history with academic freedom has not been exactly an easy one. People have referred to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's relationship with academia. Universities have always been at loggerheads with governments that have been perceived to be totalitarian. And the issue may not necessarily have died down, perhaps till today. The idea that we can have a university that challenges the established order. But even more, in a more nuanced way, because governments tend to have particular relationship with organized labor, governments tend to have relationship with university in that direction as well. So take it from this perspective. The fact that UTAG is an organized entity and is organized labor, and the fact that UTAG is almost always making qualms about salary increases, about book and research allowance increases in the universities, which is interesting. I said this somewhere and I didn't get an applause. When I say UTAG is only head of whenever they're asking for salary increases and allowances. We never seem to hear UTAG announcing a major research that is apparently going to change Ghana's madness, so to speak. We never hear that. But when we hear of UTAG, it means they're going to speak of salary increases. But I was reminded that anytime they ask of salary increases, I also get a pay, right? You know, so that quickly made me quiet. I didn't want to say much about that. But it's important for us to remember that government's relationship with organized labor tends to have an influence among the universities. If UTAG is the one that can make qualms on behalf, or rather complain to government or fight government, so to speak, on behalf of university teachers, can UTAG, truly speaking, in other words, can UTAG, truly speaking, be representative of the interest of lecturers if UTAG, so to speak, is asking for salary increases and all kinds of things from government, and at the same time we're asking to represent our interest? The truth of the matter is that it is not exactly an easy relationship when you think of the fact that organized labor, which represents everyone, including universities and the people of the university, must deal with government anytime they're asking also for protection from and on behalf of government. Organized labor always seeks the love of government because eventually government is the biggest employer. But as we move further in this direction, the bigger question we have to ask is, what do we do about the test-cons of this world? What do we do about the things of this world? And I especially recognize the presence of the Deputy Minister of Education, who just entered at the right time for me to speak about the things and test-cons of this world. Honorable Apark has been my good friend for so long. But indeed. So there you go. You know. But the things and the test-cons of this world, and he's owned up that he was a member of one of those. What do we do about these? And I'm going to ask the Honorable Minister, therefore, these things and test-cons, are they grounds for training people, or are they spies on the universities? Because government may not be on campus, but government knows everything that happens on campus. As someone who has been in academia for 23 years, as I mentioned earlier, I can tell you for a fact that sometimes it amazes me the extent of knowledge government has about the happenings on campus. And it is the reason why selections of vice chancellors, selections of all kinds of appointments on campuses, government tends to know who is who and who is where. And part of the reason I suspect for that is that we have some people who are students on campus calling themselves things and test-cons. And these guys, I don't think, are just training themselves. I think they are CIAs on behalf of government, and they play the role so well. These are the real power brokers on campus. And as we speak of academic freedom, we truly may not be able to overcome the challenges of suppression unless we define the parameters of the relationship that scholars, the universities, ultimately have with government. Are the test-cons and things of this world grounds for training, or do they play other role? Now, what happens? That's the bigger problem. When academics are the ones who are caught in the love of government. It is easy. When government is suppressing you and you are fighting government, it is easy. And by the way, government is not the only one who suppresses. Society, the general society also suppresses. The general society also plays all kinds of influential roles that impacts academic freedom. But what happens when academics are the ones who are caught in the love of government? So when academics are raising their hands, I'm here, I support you. I'm here, I have done a research to support you. I'm here, I'm giving you information. When academics are the ones who are trying to endear themselves to government. When we get to that particular point in time, what happens is that academics do not churn out scholarship properly so-called. Academics churn out scholarship which is supposed to influence a particular paradigm of thinking. They churn out predetermined outcomes by way of research, and this, properly so-called, is not research. Can academic freedom also happen in poverty? Or the larger question is this: can you truly be free when poor? Can universities experience academic freedom without adequate financing? The biggest universities in Ghana live at the behest of government. They still depend on government for subventions. A good number of them are directly paid by way of their lecturer salaries, etc., by government. In other words, they operate at the behest of government. Can we truly be free if we are, as it were, trying to get government to ultimately finance our activities? The truth of the matter is government, and that's the interesting part, government has been trying for some time to get out of the business of financing universities, thanks especially to difficulties of government or financing of its budget. Government has been trying to get out of influencing, or rather out of financing universities. Regrettably and ironically, universities are the ones who've been asking government to continue financing them, even those who are outside want to get inside. What therefore are the manifestations of control? The manifestations of control are many, but I mentioned one key and most difficult one, and that is where there's a subtle curricular manifestation, manifestation of control. If, for example, government control how a society thinks, what government does is to control curricula. I dare say that while we are not there at the moment, government, at least in Ghana, has over the years directly suggested that this is the content I want you to have. The truth of the matter is government has so many ways of influencing curricula. And you can think of actors, I'm talking about lecturers, who may be political actors or who may be politically influenced. These lecturers themselves or these scholars may have their own curricula influenced by their, not only their perspectives, but for the governments that they, so to speak, represent in different dimensions. For us to also learn that where there's a failure of academic freedom, learning ultimately ends, and that is where the danger is. That light, which is supposed to be the torch light, which, as I indicated, we have in many of the universities and secondary schools, they're supposed to be the torchlight or the light in the darkness. When academic freedom fails, that light dims. And when that light dims, there is no learning. So learning ends. But more dangerously, when academic freedom fails, there is propaganda. We stop teaching facts. We stop teaching research. We stop teaching new learning. In the case of science, we stop innovating. We stop becoming the newness of society, reinvigorating old learning and changing the paradigm of the bad things. We stop doing that. What we start doing is that we start reflecting the bad paradigm of things. That is called propaganda. We start teaching propaganda. In totalitarian states, they teach propaganda. You teach what makes the dear leader happy. You teach what makes the establishment look good. And the truth of the matter is, the only way a society can truly develop is by new learning in academia. If we look all around us in the world, all the societies that developed, they developed from campuses. They developed from innovation. They developed from new thinking, including China. China, which for many, many years was doing propaganda by reason of the Cultural Revolution. China itself reformed. And it is the universities of China that led Chinese development as we're experiencing today. So we can't kill our universities and somehow expect that we'll have development in the university. Innovation dies. Political power, unfortunately, engulfs everyone. How do we therefore overcome academic freedom, as I conclude? The first one, how do we therefore overcome the suppression of academic freedom that Ghana has been experiencing for many years, for some time, I have to say, especially in recent times? I have to say, the first one, we have to deal with the issue of university financing. Financing almost always represents a standpoint, an issue of control. He who pays the piper calls the tune. It's a conventional thing we all do. So I think universities must do something about their financing. If you go looking for financing from government, you cannot disentangle yourself from that. But not just government. We go looking for financing from other finance houses. They could be multinational entities, they could be international agencies, they could be whatever they are. Whoever pays us, often, before we even get the funding, they would have told us what they want. So I'm doing a particular research, and I'm asking you to give me the money. Before they give you the money, they tell you specifically how to tweak your research for particular expectations so that the findings reflect their own financing agenda. So the truth of the matter is, whether it's government or external agencies, whoever is paying us often tells us what to do. We probably have to become more creative in how we get financing. Number two, we have to unite scholars. Scholars have to be united, and I think a conversation like this could be a good beginning of uniting scholars. But scholars will have to get united, and they have to speak with common voices. Because of time, I'm running that to highlight government-academia partnership. Government and academia do not have to, under circumstance, be opposites. They do not have any circumstance that conflicts or loggerheads. Because the truth of the matter is, scholarship to benefit. It may be critical of government. It may look critical of the establishment, but ultimately it is designed to achieve a purpose which is supposed to be for the benefit of society. And if it is the leader of society, then scholarship should be that oil or that oiling of that machinery of society which is supposed to lead us towards development. So we have to highlight the partnership that exists between government and academia instead of highlighting the points of conflict. The fourth one is that we have to internalize and articulate the freedom of academia in the classroom. Like I said, often the freedom of academia is not necessarily, or the freedom of scholarship is not necessarily in our publications, which is an important source, but it's in what we teach. And sometimes the truth of the matter is we teach our ideologies, we teach our preferences that may not be scholarship, but which sometimes are overtly political. And as I indicated, it's not just the teacher of law or the teacher of politics, but even the teacher of business. As you manipulate those macroeconomic indicators and factors to reflect a certain paradigm, you are not teaching scholarship. As you tweak the science so that the science you're preaching does not conflict with politics. You are teaching politics and not science, so to speak. And then the last one, which in recent times proved controversial, but thank God it did not come to pass, was the universities bill that the and I just have to say it like that, but the ex-government put before Parliament. Thank God it didn't become bill, because that was a totalitarian legislation that would have seen me become a former lecturer if truly had happened, which also then means I would have probably have to come and look for a job at CDD. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure Dr. Asante would have found something substantial for you to do. But thank you very much for the very inspiring call to action. I believe that with the Deputy Minister of Education here, please help me welcome Dr. Honorable Clement Apak. Thank you for coming. We've also been joined by Professor Dima Buedi, the board chair for Afrobarometer and co-founder of CDD. He's the reason we are all here today. Now, I believe we'd like to get a better understanding of ACAF's mission, vision, and its values. And joining us to do that is Miss Ellie Flynn, the project officer at ACAF. Please, let's give it up for her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Chair, Honorable Deputy Minister of State, members of the ACAF Governing Board, members and partners of ACAF, distinguished guests, friends of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. Today is not just about the birth of an organization. It is about the beginning of a movement that stands for academic independence, intellectual courage, and the right of scholars, students, and institutions across Africa to think, speak, and innovate without fear or suppression. We are here because we believe that the future of Africa depends on a free and vibrant academic space. ACAF is our collective response to the challenges that threatens academic freedom. And today, I'm excited to share with you our vision, mission, and goals as we embark on this journey together. Imagine a continent where scholars fear for their safety when they question authority. A place where critical thinking is stifled and universities are reduced to mere extensions of political control. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is reality, just as our guest speaker, our keynote addressed it. It is against this background that the African Coalition for Academic Freedom, ACAF, was established. Urgent and unwavering response to the challenges and threatening of higher education on our continent, guided by clear vision and to impact. Our vision. The vision of the coalition is to be the leading regional defender of academic freedom in Africa, fostering a for academic freedom and serving as a catalyst for human rights, democracy, and sustainable development on the African continent. Our mission is simple yet powerful. That is to collaborate with members, partners, and relevant stakeholders to formulate academic freedom principles that speak to the African experience, develop appropriate advocacy strategies and interventions, and build supportive political constituencies outside the confines of the university to promote academic freedom as a vehicle of democracy, human rights, respect for the rule of law, and societal development. To turn this mission into reality, we have outlined 5 key objectives. First is to advance research and advocacy for academic, monitor and develop freedom in Africa. Then to promote a culture of respect for academic freedom. Fourthly, to develop and build strong networks and partnerships. And then lastly, to ensure organizational and sustainability and growth. These objectives are not just words on paper, but the guiding principles that shape our daily actions and then long-term strategies. What are our strategies? Strategic approach. ECAF's work is grounded in a strategic approach that prioritizes advocacy, monitoring of academic violations, and building collaborative networks, among others, in a manner that is regionally tailored while sharing information and expertise across the African region. In conclusion, ECAF stands as a beacon of hope and transformation. Our vision, mission, and goal guide us in building a more democratic and sustainable society. But we cannot do this alone. And so we are inviting all our stakeholders, government agencies, private sector partners, non-profits, and individuals to join us in this journey. Academic freedom is not a privilege, it is a right. Let us stand together to protect it, ensuring that Africa's scholars can contribute to a brighter and free future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellie. I believe you can do it better. Now we have a better understanding of ACAB's values, and we are certainly going to show our commitment towards defending and championing academic. Now, I believe we all want a fresh, all right? The media team is going to give us some very melodious tunes just to refresh ourselves and our minds, cool it off a bit, and then we'll take it from there. So the media team, if you're ready, kindly take us away. Thank you. Imba, governing board member of ACAP, and joining him, to do this will be Ayebia to help with the launch of the ACAP website. But I have just been informed that we need to congratulate Honorable Francis Xavier Osu, who is now a member of the General Legal Council. SOSU, yes. Also, our Deputy Minister of Education, who takes so much pride in representing his constituency. Got to mention that, but he's also the MP for Busa South. So once again, you're welcome, honorables. So Dr. Imba, please, the next stage is for you. Ayobia will be joining you shortly with her scissors. Ayobia, please, you are supposed to join Doc. Thank you very much, Doc. This is for you.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and thank you, Chair, Professor Apiaje Toa. I feel greatly honored to be in this position to unveil the archive banner and his website. I thought I should, even though this should continue without any speech, take a bit of a minute to thank Professor Aboshi for that excellent keynote. I think we should go back, if it's being recorded, everyone should go back and listen again and again. The only other one minor thing I should add is that as a student and then later as a teacher, I think that one of the problems confronting academic freedom and issues around academic freedom in our universities or institutions of higher learning is that there is no course within which academic freedom is taught. So you can't become a professor of academic freedom. So it's not even a subject that is discussed in the universities as a part of any discipline. Or maybe I should say that is discussable. So, and with that, I should again draw attention to Professor Abos's excellent keynote. I will myself go back to it and again because I think I haven't quite heard anyone speak like that about academic freedom. Thank you very much, and we should proceed with this idea. So I'm trying to decide which side to cut from. Yeah. Here. Okay. This is wonderful. Defending academic freedom, fostering democratic culture, building Africa's tomorrow. I think it's the same thing on the big board there.
Prize for us, so would have to wait for her. She's a very, very important person at ACAP. I think Profetia would attest to that. In fact, she's the main brain behind everything today, and let's give it up for her once more. She deserves it.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, so just continuing from where Dr. Mba stopped. My work here is very simple. Let me quickly acknowledge the dignitaries in our midst. The Chair, Honorable Deputy Minister of State, our dear Member of Parliament, heads of board, heads of institutions, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. So my work here is very simple, like I said. As part of launching ACAF or unveiling the organization, we are also going to launch our website. And it's one thing we've been working on to make our mission more accessible and impactful. And I'm going to walk you through a few sections. Let me just put it across that our website is still a work in progress because we are looking to add more features as we go on. So before I run you through the sections like I mentioned, let's take a quick scenario. So we have a professor in, say, Kenya or Tanzania, whose work is being threatened, probably due to certain circumstances. Let's assume he lends his voice to a cause in his country, and as a result, his work is being threatened. We can all agree that this professor needs urgent support, but he may not be sure where to turn because his options are limited. and he may not have the information he needs. So that is exactly why we put up this website, so that this professor and many others like him will have access to the right information and the support they need in situations like this. So the whole idea of the website is to make it a hub where scholars like this professor I mentioned can find information, opportunities, and connections they need in just a few clicks. So a couple of sections. I would start, well, we have the homepage, which is like the central parts of the website. And Daniel, please, let's go to the team. Yes, so the administrative staff, ACAF is run by 3 members. I like to say Prof and his girls. It's just Professor Tia, Ellie, and then myself. So we are the administrative staff. And then for the board members, ACAF is led by very seasoned professors. We are privileged to have 2 of them in our midst. Let me take the opportunity to acknowledge them. So Professor Adumako Ampofo is here. And then also Dr. Chika Mba is here. He helped us with the unveiling earlier. We have others. Okay, so Dr. Michael Augustus Akabo, Ms. Efia Santua Asariche, Professor Tia himself, and Professor Divine. We have others which are not here yet as well. So these are the members of the governing board. And then we also have, let's look at the monitoring section. Okay, so the monitoring section is supposed to basically help us monitor incidents or attacks on academic freedom. And these attacks come in various forms. So there are killings, there's violence, there are disappearances, there's persecution, there's loss of position, there's imprisonment, and all of that. It's amazing when we talk about the figures because people think that maybe just 1 or 2. But according to the report, the Free to Think report generated by scholars, we saw over 300 cases of attacks on academic freedom last year. And so ours is going to focus on attacks in Africa precisely. Scholars at Risk does global monitoring, but ours is going to focus on Africa. So we have countries where the incident happened, and then we have the institutions, the attack type, and then if you want to do a keyword search, you are also allowed to do that. We have some institutions. These are not all of them. Like I said, we'll keep adding as we go on. And then finally, I would want us to look at the publications and resources. So that is where we have, that is where we have articles written by seasoned professors. So where they share their thoughts and insights on academic freedom. And the list is very long. We'll keep adding. So if you need any information whatsoever, you need to pull out an article, you can quickly come here and then find it. And then finally, let me touch on the contact. So we are located here in the CDD building. Our socials, kindly plead that you follow us on our social media platforms so that you stay updated with any news or events, anything going on with the organization. So we have our website, we have our socials, and then our address nicely printed on there. With that, I think we've covered everything. So with that, I have the singular honor of declaring the ACAF website officially launched. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayabia. I've just been informed that we've been joined by a rep from the Angolan embassy here in Ghana who goes by the name Joao Baltazar. He's a counselor at the embassy. Please, let's welcome him with a round of applause. Thank you, sir, for coming. Okay, so we are going to receive a message from Mr. Rob Quinn, the Executive Director of Scholars at Risk. His influence is very significant in our mission here today. So the media team, can we go? Who is handling this? Okay, you're ready.
Good day. To the Ambassador, government ministers, leadership, and members of the Center for Democratic Development, the members of the Board of Advisors of the African Coalition for Academic Freedom, to the Director, Professor Kwadwo Apiagie-Attawa, and to all the ACAF members and civil society partners and guests. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today on this important occasion of the formal launch of ACAF. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you in person, but I assure you that I am with you in spirit and that we are partners in an important mission to protect and promote academic freedom at the university as a space in democratic societies for independent thinking and information sharing for the public good. I have been executive director of Scholars at Risk since its launch in June of 2000. African scholars and the rich history and experience of African universities with academic freedom and the threats to it have been part of our work from the very beginning. At our founding conference, I remember we had an extensive discussion about the challenges of harmonizing state building and institutional autonomy in the post-colonial period and beyond. We discussed the threats to the university and academic freedom resulting from the period of World Bank-imposed structural adjustment programs. And we had a representative of the All Africa Student Union speak about the importance of the student voice in higher education and the need to protect student expression in our work. We built on this early work throughout our history. We have at this point worked with scholars from almost every country in Africa, many of whom found temporary refuge at universities on the continent. Many others were welcomed by universities in other regions, in Europe and North America, but they always remain connected to their institutions and communities back home. As Scholars at Risk broadened our work into advocacy, research, and learning spaces, we have partnered with scholars and universities throughout Africa. As early as 2006, we co-organized sub-regional workshops on academic freedom and autonomy, including in partnership with, among others, the AAU, Codesria, WARC, and Osria, and universities in Tunisia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Senegal, South Africa, and more. Out of these activities grew various working groups and task forces, including African scholars, that have contributed to, among others, Scholars at Risk Academic Freedom Monitoring Project, its annual Free to Think reports, the Academic Freedom Index, and the UN Principles on Implementing the Right of Academic Freedom. In sum, we have already done good and important work together. But at the same time, as Scholars at Risk Network and all these activities have been growing, the threats to universities, scholars, and academic freedom have also been growing. Frankly, we are not keeping up with the pace of threats. And please understand as I say this that I'm speaking from the United States, where we're presently experiencing state pressures on higher education at levels not seen since the 1950s. We must keep doing what we do, but we must, as a community, do more. We must be more strategic. We must move the needle, not just on individual cases, but by improving the overall frameworks under which scholars and universities operate. We recognize that Scholars at Risk cannot and should not do this alone. At the same time, Scholars at Risk has never been a conversion project. We are not looking to convert enemies of academic freedom to our cause. Rather, Scholars at Risk has always been about linking up. We know that there are scholars in universities all over the world who understand and value academic freedom. Our mission, our strategy, is to identify them, link up with them, understand the conditions and constraints under which they operate, and try to support them. With this goal in mind, we set out to identify partners who might be interested in establishing regional partnerships, coalitions of individuals and groups, to join in the defense of academic freedom. Our vision, which we call Academic Freedom 2035, is a confederation of regional academic freedom coalitions in every world region, working independently on regional priorities, but also working together to establish and fight for a global academic freedom agenda. We hope that Scholars at Risk can assist in this by sharing our experience in network building and activities. We hope to shorten the learning curve, if you will, including by helping to attract the necessary startup funding. But we also know that we will learn from each new regional coalition about new challenges and new opportunities to advance this mission. The formal launch today of ACAF is therefore, I think, an historic moment. You join two other existing coalitions in the Americas and Southeast Asia, and you're setting an example for scholars and partners in other regions of the world to follow. I firmly believe that the work you will be discussing at this event is laying a foundation not just for Africa, but for the world. I believe that when we look back on this meeting from 2035, we will see this meeting as the starting point of something very important. The threats are great and growing, but I firmly believe that there has never been a better time to defend academic freedom. We have more tools and experience than ever before. For the first time in human history, we have the opportunity to build a truly global collective response. I'm therefore grateful to all of you for being part of this meeting today. I'm grateful for your taking part in the activities of ACAF, and I'm so grateful for myself and everyone at Scholars at Risk for the opportunity to partner with you. I wish you a very successful meeting and look forward to our future work together. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we'd like to hear a few words from some of our dignitaries here. I'm not the only one, right? I am not the only one, right? Thank you. So, Dr. Asante, if you are ready to share a few words. Dr. Asante is the Director for Partnerships at CDD. Please help on my boss.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you all for coming for this very important event. We are very happy to finally see ACAF being formally launched today. When Professor Tia approached us to collaborate on this initiative, we didn't hesitate. Already for the last couple of years, working in the sub-region, working in Ghana, we've seen a general decline in democracy globally, but particularly the effects in the sub-region has been quite profound, and I think we all know the unconstitutional changes in government in a lot of places. But I think what has been really a challenge is that has come with closing of civic spaces. In some places, actually closed civic spaces. The attack on speech, rights of assembly, association, movement, and a lot of civil society actors, a lot of collaborators and friends who have been abducted in the middle of the night or, disappeared. All kinds of violations of human rights that have happened. And we've had an opportunity to have to host people in emergency situations, fleeing their countries. So this was very easy for us because we know that academics, often activists themselves, fall into that category. So it's just basically an expansion of what we are already committed to. So really happy to see the turnout, many friends and collaborators here, and I'm hoping that this is a bigger community, not just for academics, for us to look at that particular subject. I really like what Professor Bochi, delivered here. It was very provocative in terms of, scope, how to respond, the nuances of our own Ghanaian context and so on. So I really have enjoyed, and I think that is the beginning of the conversation. But it's also to remind academics that they and the civil society, or those of us all in the civic space, we are all in the same boat because we are all part of the public. And our rights, we want, if we want to secure our rights and promote our rights, then we need to work together. So
It's a real pleasure, and congratulations again to SF for the launch.
Thank you, Doc. Now to a very honorable person who is with us right now, Honorable Apak.
Thank you. I thought you would have said Chief Apak. First of all, let me apologize for my rusty voice. I've been suffering from a reoccurring sore throat since December 1st. If not because of my background, I clearly would have attributed that to some political opponent who doesn't want me to succeed. But it is the nature of the business. My doctor has advised me to rest my voice. But how do you rest your voice in my line of work? I see my junior colleague, Lawyer Sosu, also a young vandal, nodding his head. Indeed, it's a privilege to be here. And I want to stand on existing and established protocol to welcome all of us here who have taken the time to be part of this historic moment. I entered in good time to hear some of the very provocative comments made by my colleague. I say colleague because I still consider myself as a member of academia. That is never going to change. And I mean Professor Abuchi. I was particularly intrigued by the point he made with regards to TAIN and TESCOM. Are these organizations that are seeking to train younger generations of politicians, or they are a cover for spying and reporting to the political class? A very profound question. I had never thought of it. Though I am a pioneer of TAIN, we were admitted to start our degree programs at the University of Ghana in 1992. And so we were the first group that was used to form these now well-established institutions. But as to whether we are spies or we are there to train, that is a question that the gods will need to answer. More formally, I am here to represent the Minister for Education, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, himself a student activist like myself. But of course, I continued with my activism. And I believe very strongly that if I wasn't pushed into formal politics, I may have ended up being a fellow of CDD. Because as you know my background, I've always taken up causes, I've advocated, fought for rights. And so I feel very much at home. And the understanding the role and function of academic freedom is often misunderstood by society, government, and even among academics. I don't think we have a unified definition of what academic freedom means. The society has often interpreted academic freedom as a bourgeoisie ivory tower privilege which grants special status to academics over the masses. But that is certainly not what academic freedom means. To the state, most often academic freedom is seen as a privilege that is unduly applied by the university to make government unpopular and the state ungovernable. Sometimes we've been accused of these things. That is also a clear misunderstanding of what academic freedom means. To the university, academic freedom is sometimes applied as an unlimited freedom with no accompanying responsibilities, which therefore authorizes them to be unreasonable in their demands. Yet still, for others, academic freedom is often connected to labor rights issues and only raised when it comes to the demand for better working conditions, in particular, book and research allowance, for example. But that still is not an adequate representation of what academic freedom means. Yet, academic freedom is broader and goes beyond these understandings, or may not be what it is to all of the above groups mentioned. It is for this reason that in the wisdom of the framers of the 1992 Constitution, for the first time in the constitutional history of our republic, academic freedom was guaranteed in the Constitution as one of the hallowed rights. It is therefore unfortunate, but I must state that in 2018 thereabout, the previous regime sought to muscle academic freedom by their attempt to enact what we describe as the infamous Public Universities Act by presenting a bill that they sought to be passed into law. I'm sure many colleagues here in gathered know how actively we fought collectively and how, as a member of the then opposition and a member of the Education Committee of Parliament, I took the side of academics to oppose this bill as having the propensity to violate various aspects of academic freedom which previous governments, even including military regimes, sought to protect and to promote. And I must say we fought a good fight. Had it not been for the coalition of academics and politicians, civil society organizations, and well-meaning Ghanaians, including some traditional leaders, I believe this atrocity may have seen the light of day. So the fight to protect academic freedom invariably is a collective fight. It's a collective responsibility. We ought not to leave that to only academics who are on the campuses of our various academic institutions. It is gratifying, therefore, to note that through the vigilant fight that we waged, by academics in particular, the law did not live to see the light of day. And I'm happy to say that had it seen the light of day, under the current government, under the leadership of John Dramani Mahama, and his vice president, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, herself an academic, it would have been one of the first to be repealed. But thank God, we don't have to waste time, resources, and energy trying to repeal a law that we killed before it came into being. The Ministry of Education, under the current administration, led by His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, is bent on doing all in its power to safeguard academic freedom and to ensure that it is used appropriately to help the universality to realize its reasoned desire, which is to promote the pursuit, production, dissemination, and application of knowledge to improve societal, political, and economic conditions in the country for the greater good of society. It is on this score that the Ministry of Education welcomes the coming into being of the Africa Coalition for Academic Freedom, whose focus is to help support the university, academics, and students to better understand the extent of their rights and freedoms, as well as accompanying responsibilities. The government of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has already taken certain measures, such as the no academic fee policy for first-year students in public tertiary institutions and the introduction of the societal interventions, such as the free tertiary education for persons with disability. The organization of the recent Forum on Education also made some references to academic freedom, which in any case is not limited to the tertiary space alone. The Ministry of Education, headed by the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, will do all it can to operationalize the critical recommendations agreed at the forum, including entrenching and promoting academic freedom. The ministry wishes to take this opportunity to assure ACAF that it will open its doors for dialogue and consultations so as to benefit from the expertise of this organization and its operations not only in Ghana, but throughout the continent of Africa, as its mandate establishes. I personally find it noteworthy and a privilege to have been sent by the minister to represent him and government on this very important occasion. As an academic myself, I consider myself a bona fide member, and my doors are always open. This is a collective responsibility, and you can count on my individual support as well as that of the ministry and the government in this effort that ought to be celebrated. I'm grateful for the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you for the assurance, and we promise to definitely come knocking on your door. Now, as the event gradually comes to a close, we would like to hear from our chairperson once more to give us the closing remarks. So, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've had a good morning, haven't we? I'm seeing some very important people. Everybody here is important, but I'm seeing some important activists in the space. Personally, I have a sense of a feeling of comfort and pleasure because I think that ACAF will have a lot of power, and we've heard about collaboration. And I'll say a few words about that as well. That the establishment and the launch of this important organization makes me feel like I can exhale a little bit, because we live in times where I think our anxiety levels go up when we hear things. And I really need to congratulate my brother, Professor Kwadwo Appiah-Tuah, for taking this bold step, and for his team in leading us, in bringing us here today. And I'm proud to have been invited to be a board member, and very excited to see the website. I'm also really pleased to hear that monitoring and building of networks will be a very strong feature of ACAF's work. This is so important. We're talking about academics, and we need research in order to make our case. With no offense to journalists, but a journalist can go on air and make a statement, and it's not necessarily required to provide evidence. We as academics have to do that. We cannot just throw statements out into the public. I don't see Professor Abuchi, but I want to make reference to the important point he made about our work in challenging orthodoxy, and that we need to reflect on whether we are leading lights or we are just echoing what is out there in the ecosystem. And I think he pushed us to acknowledge that we need to unsettle orthodoxies. And we really need to unsettle orthodoxies in a context where our universities are inherited. We all know that there were universities on the African continent, but the modern quote-unquote universities inherited from a European construction. And so we have accepted certain orthodoxies, sometimes without, and other people's fundamentalisms, without necessarily critiquing or questioning them. And we need to do that. I think the keynote speaker in his very important lecture made a point, maybe it was a jab at UTAG, and the way we often think of our conditions of service, and that seems to be what we do. This was not the case in the 70s and 80s. As I recall it personally, I was in secondary school at the time. 80s, I was in the university. And the universities were ripe with academics dealing with issues of freedoms. The body of professionals, many people were arrested. Doctors were driven out of their homes in Kolebu because they dared to take government on about issues that had to do with our freedoms and not about their conditions of service. And the PUB has been mentioned severally here. Honorable Apak, being a politician, couldn't help throwing in the work that his party had done. But I want to remind him, as a fellow academic, that we academics took the lead. UTAG initially, eventually some members of UTAG left Legon UTAG high and dry to lead this charge. But we did it, and I think we did it admirably. So UTAG, yes, today we may be focusing a lot on our conditions of service, but we have and still continue to fight for academic freedoms. And it is important for us to think about these orthodoxies and unsettling them. And I'm reminded, or I remember, and I love to use this example of a colleague, Professor Wandari, who is a Pro-Vice Chancellor at Legon. His inaugural lecture as professor, he talked about COVID. And as I was listening to him, I realized just how much knowledge coming from the continent can be under attack. And this is not the time or place to talk about the various theories that were thrown out about COVID and how it performs or doesn't perform on the continent, and how knowledge coming from the continent, there were attempts to silence this. His team is very strong. They got their research published, but some of us may not be as powerful to get the truth about our condition on the continent out. And I think that ECAF provides us with a space. I'll be bringing my remarks to a close, but I want to give a little anecdote here as well. I'm going to use my daughters as an example because they are my children. They cannot divorce me, even if they are annoyed when I use them as an example. When they were in JSS, two very different personalities. The older one learned very quickly that there's knowledge in textbooks, and there's knowledge that her parents at home who are too known will tell her that what in the textbook is not correct. But she needs to pass her exams. So she'll take the one in the textbook that her teacher has given her, and she'll put it in the exam, and she will pass. The effect of this is it makes you a little bit schizophrenic because you are constantly having to be two people. Some people can manage this. Others suffer as a result because at some point you are not sure who to represent where. Our younger daughter, on the other hand, we try to encourage her that what we are telling her is the truth, what your teacher has given you 5/10, because instead of following the template that is in the textbook, you have decided to be creative and innovative, and then the 5/10, you are not happy, you are crying, your parents are telling you that, oh, you have done well, and the teacher is telling you you've not done well. People respond differently to when the orthodoxies are imposed, withdrawn, curtailed, and it starts from an early age. And even though ECAF is to deal at the higher level, the tertiary level in particular, as individuals, we need to be very minded about how we train our children and what kind of advocacy we can do at all levels of education. And I'm very happy the Deputy Minister is here because our textbooks and the syllabi are a huge problem. And this same daughter of mine that I mentioned, who was sophisticated enough to know what to give to her teachers and what she will do in other spaces, is now doing a PhD, and she's looking at education. And she had occasion to do field work in a secondary school where the teacher was struggling in the classroom because the syllabus and the textbook content he knew was problematic. A student challenged it in class, and she could see the confusion and the struggle on the teacher's face. Do I support this student in this knowledge and the question they're asking that is correct? Or do I channel the student to focus on what is in the syllabus so that he or she can pass the exam, and as a teacher, I'm not blamed that my students didn't do well? Why should a teacher have to go through such a struggle? So I'm using this opportunity to plead that the politicization of the textbooks must come to an end. We need people to produce knowledge that is accurate. A few more comments and I'll take my seat. And I want to emphasize the point that has been made about collaborations. ECAF cannot do this work alone. We are here to hold hands. It has been said by several speakers here, and collective action does not happen in a vacuum. Sometimes the things that we fear do not happen. I'm sure Pojo can narrate the number of times he has been called, berated. Oh, don't say this, don't do that. Don't. He's a professor, he's sitting here, he's still alive. It is true that perhaps in another country it might not have been the case. But when we work together, very often, the shadows that we are afraid of, they do not come to haunt us. Some of us are tenured professors, and yet we are afraid to speak. Who will take your job away from you? Again, in Ghana, it has not happened. It may happen in other places. So when we have power, we should use it. A younger colleague of mine said to me, Prof, when you are in the room, say the things on our behalf that we cannot say. Ministers, MPs, you are in the rooms with the power. Honorable Akpaka, I'm looking at you directly. You can see me looking, and you have called us to speak to you. So we will do so. So the collaboration has to work. And a final comment on funding. It is true that he who pays the piper calls the tune. But let us remember that the payment and the resources that government has, it is we, the taxpayers, who have given them the money. It is not government's money. Government has not gone to take the money from their personal cocoa farm or gold mine. It is we, all our money. So when, as a state institution, we are asking and in fact demanding that we should be supported and that our funding shouldn't be taken away because of disagreements, it is our right. It is not a privilege. So, in conclusion, I am expressing a lot of hope. And I am determined that whatever small role I can play, ACAP's work will be successful, that we will do it together. I have a deep sense of optimism, and I'm calling all of us to action, to participate in ACAP's work. When you are called upon, please be ready. When you have opportunity, bring your suggestions. Do not be silent. It is the work of ACAF is to destabilize the status quo. So there will be ripples and there will be pushback. And we can only make this happen if we do it together. So once again, congratulations to the founding members and thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you once more for taking time off your busy schedules to join us today. We are very grateful, but to do it better, or to express our gratitude better, Ms. Ayebia Quarantine would be given us a vote of thanks briefly, and after that, would share a little logistics announcement, so that can follow, right?
Thank you, Sharon. I'm here again, this time on a different mission. Okay, the chair, PT Minister for Education, the Member of Parliament for the Madina constituency, the rep from the heads of institution, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I and Anna to be delivering the vote of thanks for this all-important event. On behalf of the Regional Director, Professor Apeje Etia, I'd like to express our deepest gratitude, first of all, to the Scholars at Risk Network, whose unwavering commitment to academic freedom have led to the very birth of ACAF. Their support and guidance have been instrumental, and we are truly grateful for their continued partnership. Also, I'd like to thank the leadership and staff of our host institution, CDD Ghana. I want to say a very big thank you for always welcoming us with open arms. Your assistance and direction means so much to us. And to the members of the governing board, our esteemed professors, most of whom are not here due to other equally important engagements they need to attend to. We appreciate your leadership and guidance that shape our work. I would also like to express our gratitude to the Embassy of Angola in Ghana. When we began reaching out to organizations, they were one of the very first people to respond, and they've been very supportive since then. And so even though the ambassador himself is not here, we still want to say a very big thank you to the rep and to the embassy as a whole. I'd also like to thank the Deputy Minister for Education, Dr. Apak, or can I say Chief, for being here. I know he has a very busy schedule, but he made time to join us. And thank you for the address as well. I'd also like to thank the Member of Parliament for the Madina constituency. Thank you for taking time off your busy schedule as well. And then to the chairperson who doubles as a member of the governing board, Professor Adomako, we are very grateful. She didn't only grace the event, but she chaired it to a successful end. And then also Professor Bochi, who is not here, he was our keynote speaker. Even on such short notice, he was able to join us and deliver a good address. So we send our appreciation to him wherever he is as well. To the heads of institutions, individual and institutional members of ACAF, friends of the media, distinguished guests, we are grateful for your presence with us this morning. Finally, to the formidable organizing team who put this event together, it took a lot of planning and, of course, prayers in the background to make this event successful. So we are grateful to everyone. I can't mention names. Thank you all so, so much. Sans oublier ceux qui nous rejoignent virtuellement, votre participation est tout aussi précieuse. Et nous voulons dire un grand merci pour votre soutien et votre engagement. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for taking us to the Francophone country and back. Yeah. All right, so we believe that this event has not only been informative and inspiring, but it has also motivated us to be champions and defenders of academic freedom. Thank you once more for coming. My name is Sharon Willis Brown Aqua. I'm a program officer here at the Center for Democratic Development. Thank you for coming. It's been an honor, absolute honor and pleasure doing this with you today. Ayebia and the ushers are going to lead you out for a little something, lunch, I would say. Let me just put it that way, lunch, because some people might have very wild expectations. But thank you once more. And to our online guests for joining us as well. I think Dr. Akabo is online. Doctor, we see you and we appreciate you. Thank you, and do have a lovely day. Good afternoon.
Thank you.